There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 144. Today in the show, we are talking about our latest shed hunting exploits, discussing our 2017 hunting trips, and sharing recommendations and thoughts on planning DIY hunting trips. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today in the show, we're going to be talking about our 2017 hunting plans, just me and Dan. And as we talk about some of this stuff, I want to talk more in general too about how we plan our hunting seasons, how we plan specific trips, some different advice and recommendations and lessons learned on how we've done that in the past, what we're planning on doing in the future. How we decide where to go, what gear to bring, how to learn about these different places or different species or stuff like that. So that's kind of the game plan for today, Dan. But before we get into that stuff, we do have a couple interesting updates from more recently, don't we?
Yeah, my wife made a delicious crisp today.
A crisp, like an apple crisp?
Yeah, but it wasn't apple. It was like raspberry, some kind of mixed berry jam thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's delicious.
I'm a big fan of crisps.
Yeah, me too.
I like a good berry crisp or a peach cobbler. Does a peach cobbler count as a crisp?
Yeah, it can. Is the top crispy?
I would say typically.
Well, then I feel it should fall in the crisp category.
Okay, good. And then apple crisp, obviously.
Obviously, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, so good. We're on the same page. I'm hungry though now.
I know. I had a small little bowl of it with a nice cold glass of milk, and here I am on a sugar high, ready to tackle today's podcast.
That's good. I'm on an endorphin high. I just did my workout for the day, so I'm a little sweaty, but ready to talk about big hunting trips. So that's good.
Wait a second. You did a workout?
How
do we even know if you did a workout? You didn't post any selfies.
Yeah. I know. Sorry, I need to get my selfie game on point here.
Right. You need to start, hey, look how many push-ups I did today.
When we were just talking about this before we started recording, I'm just not the type, nothing against people who want to post their workout pictures or selfies or whatever, but that's just not my thing. And probably that's because like 3 push-ups isn't very impressive. So I don't think that's going to get me too much.
Yeah, that's comedy. Yeah, the old, if a tree falls in the wood or woods, doesn't make a sound or whatever that is. Right. So if no selfie is posted, did a workout actually happen?
We'll never know.
You never know.
We'll never know.
You never know.
So yeah, I did a little prep because I'm taking off here in a few weeks, dude. A few weeks and I'm heading out west.
And you're going to be doing a shed hunt?
Bunch of shed hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, and hunting.
Okay.
So we'll talk more about that here in a second.
That's right.
Because I'm pretty pumped about that. But you.
Yes.
You and your wife I don't know if this is what you want to talk about or not, but I want to talk about it. You and your wife cleaned up this past weekend.
Yeah, we had a very good, fun time, and you need something like that when you're trying to get somebody into the woods, because the first couple times I've taken her shed hunting, it hasn't resulted in any type of sheds to be found. And like you mentioned, man, we went out Saturday, found 9 sheds between the two of us in about 7 hours. And wow. And it was just awesome because she found 3, I found 6, but we found, of those 3 that she found a big one, a really good sized one, and then another little one, which were matching sets to the ones that I also found. So it's kind of a cool, I don't know, to me it's just kind of a cool connection, saying that, you know, my wife found one side and I found the other side to this matching set. So
that's sweet, Dan.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm gonna, you know, take a red marker and draw hearts all over that shed, and it's gonna be like one of those BFF necklaces.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. This is going to be an issue, though, because just last weekend you were talking about how special it was that your wife found her first shed, and you were going to like put it up on a plaque or something. Then like 6 days later, now, you know, she's just racking them up. Are you going to have to put all of these now up there in a special place?
Yeah. I did a lot of thinking, so I just found some room, and they're going in with the rest of them.
There you go. Yep. They look like some good sheds, though. Some like pretty good sized ones.
Yeah. 2 things that I'm really impressed with. The biggest one, I'm picking it up right now, tons of mass, a good 4-point side, but the base is small, which tells me it's probably a young deer. So it could be going to be a 3-year-old or going to be a 4-year-old, and I'm basing that on the pedicle alone, right? Mm-hmm. So, but she did find the first big antler to a big matching set that we found, and it's a stud, mass throughout the entire thing, big bases. You know, it probably wouldn't score much, but it was a really good find for her, and that is what got her excited to go and finish out the rest of the day.
Yeah, I bet. So do you guys have some future shed hunts on the books now, or is this it?
I don't know if we're going to be going this year anymore. I mean, we just got 6 inches of snow last night.
Yeah.
Or 2 nights ago. So it's kind of, I don't know. Plus, I found one that was really chewed up. I still think there's probably some antlers out there somewhere. We just, I don't know if I'm going to be doing anything with the wife this upcoming weekend for the quote unquote shed rally. Yeah. That I feels a little late.
Yeah. I know there's still a lot of people talking like deer holding antlers, though. Like people are still seeing a lot of bucks holding. So, and it did seem like just based on some, like, you know, my buddies there in Iowa that we shed hunted with last weekend, or, you know, the previous weekend, you know, we didn't find a whole lot that weekend when you were with us and I was out there. But then these past couple of days, they were cleaning up. They found a bunch.
Right.
So it seemed like there's a lot of fresh antlers just dropping, and yeah, so. You know, there's something on the tip of my tongue. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. These sheds you found, did you find any from deer that you know?
Yeah, for the most part, the smaller ones, you know, they're kind of hard to tell. But going back and looking at the one I was talking about having the smaller base, if it is in fact this buck that I'm thinking about, it is a buck that I feel is a descendant of another buck that I called Megatron. Ooh. And I think I got a couple pictures of him on trail camera. So this buck already has the mass. Like, it's a really, really cool, just a clean 4-point side. And the main beam curves back in, but the G3 goes straight out.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And that's exactly what Megatron had. And looking back on trail cams, I think I've identified the buck that it goes to, who was around quite a bit in this summer, made a couple appearances in like the third or fourth week of November this year, and then kind of disappeared again. But now he's back in the area. Obviously, he's dropped. So who knows what this guy will turn into.
That's awesome. So based on trail camera pictures that you had, and I can't remember when you pulled your cameras. I know you didn't hunt much in the late season, but based on any kind of data you have, do you know of any bucks that you've, watched or targeted in past years that for sure made it through? Do you have any, like, for sure, yes, this buck is still around?
No, not on my main farm. The other farm that I hunt closer to home, I didn't have any trail camera pictures of any bucks that I identified as shooters going into the season. And then, when I got my trail camera stolen, I took down all the rest of my trail cameras. You don't want to take the risk of losing more. Yeah. So I took them all down, and unfortunately that means that I can't, I'm not doing the surveying that I actually want to.
Right. Well, that's always a bummer, but that leaves suspense for the summer, right?
That's right. And it's going to be, for the most part, it's pretty easy to identify the bucks that stick around. My number one target buck for the year, I think I've mentioned this earlier, got shot on a neighboring farm. And that's
Tupac,
it.
Right?
A buck I call Tupac, right? Because I shot him before, didn't kill him, and the second time he got shot, he died, which is horrible to say.
That's crazy. That's crazy how old some of these deer around you get. Like that buck, you shot him like 7 years ago or something crazy, and now he just got killed.
Yeah, it wasn't 7. I think it was 2013 when he was a 4-year-old. So plus 6 years or plus 3 years, which would have made him probably a 7-year-old buck.
Gotcha.
And he was a stud. So
yeah, wow. Do you know how big he was when he got killed?
172.
172. Yikes.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, man.
So, yeah. Yep. So there's that. Now, I did talk with some guys on the farm that I hunt with, and as far as deer are concerned, they took their trail cameras down too because they got 3 stolen this year and didn't want any more stolen. So it's kind of hard to tell what what's in the area going into this upcoming year. But just like always, come June or May or June, I'll be dropping some mineral and getting my cameras out over that.
And the cycle begins all again.
That's right. You found a shed though.
Yeah, dude. I'm pretty excited about it.
That's not Holyfield, is it?
It's not Holyfield. But because this big snowstorm was coming in, well, last time we talked, I mentioned that I had a good idea that Holyfield was back in the area. He had still been holding his antlers, but I thought he was probably going to drop him soon. Like, I saw him one time, and he kept shaking his head and doing weird things and shaking his head, and he was just acting weird. And I can't remember if we talked about this last episode or not, but I kept thinking it's going to happen soon. I just had this feeling. So after the Iowa trip, I went out and I walked what I thought was one of his core areas really hard, like fine-toothed it, nothing. And then I went out again. I told you that I found Leaner's shed from 2012. Right. I went out again and kind of worked another section over, like really, really hard, like just checking every little nook and cranny, nothing. And then, what was going on? We had, this past weekend I had to do a bunch of stuff on our camper renovation. And so I didn't get to do much shed hunting, but with the snowstorm coming in, I was thinking I got to try to get some more time in. So I went out late Sunday night for kind of a last minute, like 2-hour walk. And at the last second, instead of going to this main spot I'd been focusing on, I thought I'd check another farm across the road where there'd been a little bit more food, and I thought was another spot Holyfield could be. And I'd seen some bucks out holding there. And long story short, this is the second time I walked this farm, and I've kept walking all these edges of these fields and then these adjacent bedding areas, and finally this is there was kind of a finger of timber that came out in between a cut bean field on one side and a cut cornfield on the other side, and there was a grassy strip along the side of that timber, And it's one of those spots that just screams sheds, and you always think, oh, this is where I should find some sheds, but 95% of the time you don't. But still, I was like, gotta check it, walk it really good. And I'm walking down the strip, and I just see this big white circle that like immediately caught my eye. And it's like, that feeling when you're like, oh, shed. Like you get that, like, you see that thing that triggers the response in your mind. But so many times this year I've seen like that thing where I'm like, oh, shed. And then I pull up my binoculars and it's, it's a stick or something. So
I remember during our little gathering, the shed gathering that we had, and there was literally 5 of us all looking at the same thing going, no, that's not a shed, is it? Remember that down by this little grassy bottom? And we're like, no, that's not a shed. Yeah, that's a shed. No, it's not a shed. And finally, someone actually went over to it and grabbed it because it looked like a shed up until 2 feet. And then it was just a
branchler.
A branchler, yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, this one, I was worried it was going to be a branchler, but I pulled up those binos, and it was a sweet, sweet pedicle. And I was pumped because it was big. You could just tell the way it was laying tines up, but not like normal tines up. It was kind of like tipped over on its side. So the pedicle was sticking up, and then the curve of the main beam was in the grass, and then you could just see tips hanging out of the grass. And I ran over there thinking could be Holyfield, and it wasn't. But it's a big 5-point side. It's the biggest antler I've ever found in Michigan. And one of my biggest sheds in general I've ever found. I think it's probably like a top 3 shed or top 4 shed of all time for me.
Nice.
And it's a deer that I got pictures of one time. The buck came into one of my food plots in December, and then that was it. But he's a really nice deer. He was probably like a 130s 10-pointer this past year, which is like an awesome deer in Michigan. Like a really nice deer in Michigan. So he made it. Next year, he's going to be a jumbo buck for Michigan. So that's pretty exciting. He'll be I would guess he was a 3-year-old this past year. So at least a 4-year-old in 2017. And you never know. Maybe he'll hang out more on my farm, or if Holyfield disappears, this would be surely a nice, what's the word? Consolation. If this deer's hanging around. So
for sure.
So that's pretty sweet, man. I was pumped.
Well, I'm happy for you, Mark.
Thank you. Now we just gotta get rid of the snow, and then as soon as I get rid of the snow, then I'm gonna just hit everything really, really, really hard again. I've never shed hunted these Michigan areas so hard, and I'm planning on putting a bunch more time in because I really badly want to find Holyfield's sheds. So I'm gonna keep at it, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm running out of spots. The best spots I thought they might be, they weren't there. But we'll keep at it.
Good luck, buddy.
Thank you, sir. So, do you want to talk 2017?
Let's talk 2017.
All right. Well, let's take a really quick break for our Sitka story, and then let's start talking 2017 hunting plans and some of our thoughts on how to plan this kind of stuff. So for our Sitka story today, we are joined by Stefan Capraletti, a Sitka whitetail ambassador from Pennsylvania. And Stefan has a very cool story about a hunt he shared with his brother.
Yeah, so this is the rifle season of 2013 here in PA. Coming off, this is the first rifle season where my grandpa couldn't actually get out. He had heart surgery. So we were trying to, relay the stories from opening day on, to my grandpa. And at the time, Ben, my brother, he was down at the University of Central Florida for his freshman year of college. And it was going on the second week of rifle season where Ben called us up and said, hey, I'm flying home for the last weekend. So, we got one day, let's try to get it done. So the last Saturday rolls around. We're all pumped, ready to go. So we're out for the whole day, walking around. We were still hunting that day. And we were getting into the last hour of, the last day of season. And I set Ben up in a good spot. And I just said, hey, I'm going to walk out to the end here of the ridge. And I'm just going to still hunt my way back to you, here by the end of the day. So we'll see what happens. And I get out to the end of the ridge, start to make my U-turn around to head back to Ben. Probably got 45 minutes now. And I'm creeping along, and up to my left pops up a doe, and right behind her is bedded, nice 9-pointer I had seen him once in archery season, just didn't get him in, shooting range. He pops up and take one shot, and I drop him, and I'm as excited as can be. But Ben's still out there, so I let him know what happened. But I said, hey, I'm still working towards you. Just keep your eyes posted. And another 3, 4, 5 minutes, I'm walking, and I hear his rifle go off, and he just calls me all excited. He goes, just dropped a nice 7-pointer. And, from then on, it was a wild night, festivities, a little celebration, getting both deer drug out back to the truck. Our family, met us at the one parking lot, and it's just an experience and memory that I'll never forget. We were able to take both buck to my grandpa's house, because he wasn't able to get out that year. And just to be able to share that memory and experience with him too, he was just so tickled and excited for both of us. He said to us, this is better than me shooting a buck, just to see you guys both be able to tag a good buck, here on the same day.
And that right there is a Sitka story. If you'd like to create a story of your own while wearing Sitka gear, you can head over to sitkagear.com. And now I've got one more quick update for you. Very soon here, we're going to be adding a new segment on the show with our partners at Whitetail Properties, in which we'll be hearing each week, very briefly, from one of their land specialists about different topics related to hunting strategies, habitat improvements, or buying and selling land. So look for that soon. And in the meantime, just want to let you know that if you're not already aware, this coming weekend, March 18th and 19th, is Shed Rally. That's the nation's largest group shed hunt, in which hunters from across the entire nation are encouraged to all go out looking for antlers on the same days, and then to share their best pictures and videos on social media with the Shed Rally hashtag. So if you're not already planning on doing that, get on out there this weekend, look for some sheds, and you could be eligible to win some great prizes too. With that, we are now set to move on with our conversation about 2017 and our thoughts and lessons learned on planning hunting trips. All right, so last night, Dan, my wife and I didn't have any kind of big plans or anything, so we were just kind of sitting on the couch, and I was talking about, we got to plan this, we got to do this, got to do that, and I kind of realized I need to just sit down and map out our year. So I made a list. I started breaking up our list. We did this for our non-hunting plans because, as you know, we do a bunch of traveling. Me and her for non-hunting stuff. But on top of that, we got a bunch of different hunting plans too. So I listed out each different hunt I'm going to go on, trip, each species, and then I started writing all these notes. Okay, did I get my license yet? Do I know which location I'm hunting yet? Do I need to apply for anything yet? And I just started breaking all this down because I'm starting to get confused. And it got me thinking about this topic of our 2017 plans and how both of us go about doing this kind of thing, whether it be for our local hunts or our traveling trips and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I thought we could talk about for the rest of the episode. And we haven't really gone into this yet on Wired to Hunt. We talked a little bit about some of my trips planned on your podcast, actually.
Yep.
But I haven't really shared anything here. So where are things standing for you for 2017 right now?
So as of right now, and this is me knocking on wood because as everybody knows now, I have a kid due September 28th. And I'm guessing it's going to come probably 4 or 5 days early. Let me pull a calendar up real quick. It's going to come 4 or 5 days early. And that means that 5 week ahead, that it's going to come somewhere on the week of the 18th, September 18th. All right. So my plan is to go elk hunting in Colorado the 1st through I'll leave the 1st and then I'll be back home on the 10th of September. So that means that the baby better not come any earlier than that, or I could be screwed, and then my wife would be permanently mad at me for the rest of her life, and I can't have that.
Can't have that. That's true.
Can't have that. So that's my really only trip planned other than, the November rut trip I usually take, and that's only an hour away. So what's your now I know it's all up in the air with baby and work and all that kind of stuff, but how do you have your whitetail stuff kind of
planned right now? I mean, are you just going to try to go out on some weekends before the November, or have you ever already thought through that, you're going to try to do a long weekend or a specific section of October, anything like that? Have you thought through things that far yet?
Knowing that the baby will be there already, I might just say adios to October this year, just so I can save brownie points and time and dedicate it towards the absolute best time of the year. And that's going to probably be November 6th through the 17th. So I won't even hunt the first 3 days unless I might take a trip down with the kids just to go check trail cameras and, see what's moving and what's up and around. And then I probably won't do anything until I take my vacation. I may get a hunt in closer to home on some different property, but as far as my big vacation, and who knows even what that's going to be like.
And you're thinking of trying to stay down there that whole time, that 10 days or whatever?
There may be a trip or two back home, but a lot of it is up in the air right now as far as when, trust me, as soon as I heard that the baby was due October or September 28th, I pulled my phone out and I started looking at dates of, when to play it safe, when to go in for the kill, I don't know. It's going to be a lot of play it by ear this year.
Yeah. So how do you and your wife kind of work through, or maybe, I don't know how this works for you, but how do you go about planning that kind of stuff? Like, is that you guys sit down and say, okay, I want to do an elk hunt this year, I want to do my whitetail rut hunt, and then you guys kind of toss it around, or how does that work for you?
Well, it's difficult for me because she's not a hunter, so she doesn't understand specific times of year quite yet. I do my best to try to educate her on that. But, when I say, hey, I want to go to Colorado for a week, what? A whole week? Why can't you just go for a 4-day weekend? I'm like, okay, it takes a day to get out there, a day to drive back, which leaves me with 2 days to hunt.
Did she really say that?
Why can't I hunt on a weekend, a long weekend?
Yeah, like why couldn't you do a long weekend in Colorado?
Well, she didn't really say that, but that's kind of, but then again, I'm in a tight spot where, I have a family. So, it's difficult for me to try to explain that, hey, I'm going to go to Colorado for a week and I'm going to be spending this much money. And she's like, what do you mean you're going to be spending that much money? That's like, what about the family? Why doesn't that money go to the family? And that's kind of a hard conversation to have sometimes. So it's just one of those things that I think it's just I let her know and she understands and we try to avoid fights.
So this is like year 4 of having kids, right? Is that right?
Right.
So is there anything you've learned about that process, like since Ava was born and now you've been doing it a few hunting seasons now? Is there anything that to do differently now than you did back then, as far as proposing hunts or planning hunts or anything like that? Like, how has that changed to make it less painful?
You just have to be able to sacrifice in other areas, right? Or make up for it by maybe doing another trip or going on another family adventure to someplace else, maybe going to a theme park or going to some museums or, I was planning on taking my wife to Napa Valley this year for a small trip, but that's not going to happen now that she's pregnant. So I'm saving that for another year. But balancing it out so it's not so self-centered when I do take these trips or go on a 5 or a 2-week vacation down south and she's left with the kids and there's all this other stuff that happens. So because my kids are maniacs and being alone with them for 10 days without any, as a single mother, so to speak, is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, as everyone knows, my situation is different than yours since I don't have kids. But I found the same thing. Like, especially even when I used to work my old day job and I had a certain number of vacation days a year, like the first year where I started traveling to hunt, I was just like, all right, I'm going to use all 2.5 weeks or whatever it was to go on these deer hunting trips. And then like Kylie was like, okay, well, what about us? Like, how are we going to do a trip? And I learned very quickly that it wasn't going to be okay to have 100% of my free time, vacation time, going to a hunt. I had to balance it out. And so, so I had to kind of start splitting it. It's like, okay, so we're going to do a week here together for something you want to do, and then I will take my week to do my thing. And then a little thing I started doing sometimes too is like even during hunting season, trying to take a week off of hunting or a weekend or something like that and do something special with her. Like that seemed to help too. But yeah, I mean, I think, whether you be,
I get way more vacation time than my wife does. So I think I get like 25 days total throughout the year, which is 5 weeks of vacation. And a week and a half of that usually goes to the family. And then I got a week for a Western trip and then 2 weeks for whitetails. And then everything else kind of goes to the family. So
that's pretty good vacation time there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the corporate world, man. I mean, you live in a cubicle. I think the only reason they have to do that is so people don't commit suicide in their cubicles, because it's definitely, obviously like, that drives you crazy. So they're like, okay, well, we can't afford to pay you a ton, but we will give you vacation time. Yeah. And, so that's where I'm lucky. Plus I hit my 5 years a couple years ago and I got a boost in my vacation time. So that's, so I got more.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, I think I started with 2 weeks a year and then I got bumped to 3 weeks a year. And I was always like, forget a raise. I just want more vacation. Give me another week.
That's right. That's right.
I just want to have time to do stuff,
Right. So if you were to take out if my wife used all of her vacation and, did all those things, then I still come out on top as far as vacation days are concerned. And then, I don't know I'm sure a lot of the listeners are going through the same exact thing that I have to go through, where the wife's saying something along the lines of, well, how would it feel? How would you feel if I took a trip with, by myself, or I took a trip? I'm like, well, if you have the money, do it. And she's like, even watching the kids. I'm like, yeah, watch the kids. But again, she has way less vacation time than I do, which means that, I don't know, maybe she'll do it. Maybe she won't.
And I in the past, I had the same thing. I was like, go on a trip on your own. Yeah, go hang out with your friends. Go do something. That's fine with me. Yeah. But like you said, it's different. And I think also, in our situation, like we have such strong passions for our hobby or our thing. Yeah. And sometimes our significant others don't have a similar type of thing in their own life. Right. And this isn't necessarily just like a wife thing. There could be female hunters out there, but their husbands or boyfriends or something, maybe they don't hunt, and so it's this just kind of goes like that significant other, whatever it is. You have life partner, whatever it might be. You got to kind of figure out ways to balance. And there's a bunch of other things I want to talk about before we. There were other things I want to talk about before we get to this, but now that we're talking about it, a couple of the things that have helped me were, the things we just talked about, and then like having these discussions way ahead of time. So planning trips out, at this time of year, and not like in August and all of a sudden say, hey, I really want to go on a trip next month. And then springing that on them, that's an issue. Another idea that kind of has worked for me is I always try to plan like a little care package or something for my wife when I'm gone. So like before I take off, like the day or two or a week before, I'll have like a bunch of different things for her while I'm gone. So a couple bottles of wine and a movie and some chocolates and like a couple things to make life easier for her while she's gone. My wife, Kylie, actually a good idea. For people that have kids, a good idea would be to surprise your wife with like a night of daycare while you're gone. So she can go off and do her own thing one night. Like you'll pay for and handle someone to come and watch the kids one night while you're gone, and then your wife can go watch a movie or go hang out with friends or do something. So it's not all kids the whole time.
That's right.
But, another important thing that I learned the hard way is the importance of communication when you're on a trip.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever told you the story of what happened in Montana, did I?
I don't think so. If you did, I don't remember.
All right, so tell me if I already told the story, but I don't think I did. When I was in Montana this past year on my deer hunt, I killed my buck and brought it back into town, brought it to the processor, and then I hung out in town for a day or something, and then I realized, I just want to go back out and scout and film and watch these deer back where I was hunting originally because I was having so much fun, and I had a few more days until my buddies came to meet me for our elk hunt. So I went back out to my campsite, went up to that public land, and just decided to spend a couple days watching. So I had told my wife that when we were in service, I had called her and told her, hey, I'm going to go back to that spot, scout, blah, blah, blah. And we had good enough service there that I was able to check in just about every day. Pretty much every day we'd either text or I'd give her a phone call or something like that. But day 6 or 7 or something like that, the deer stopped moving. I wasn't seeing them anymore. I mucked up the area or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I want to change things up. I want to go fishing. So I think I had talked to my wife the night before, like texted her or something. And then the next, let me make sure I get this story right. I think it was like midway through the day. Let's say it's on a Thursday. I texted her kind of back and forth. And then that night I went out, sat, didn't see a lot. And then that night I was like, you know what? Tomorrow morning I'm moving. So in the morning, I got up early, and it was just like go, go, go. It was packing up camp, hopping in the truck, driving, and then partway on my drive back to town, I was like, okay, I think I want to go fish in this river. So then I drove over to this river and started fly fishing, having a good time just on my own. And then I got a phone call from a friend in the area who said, hey, do you want to meet me to go fish this other place? So again, I'm like busy. I haven't been thinking about other people other than myself just because it's been go to this place, now go to this place. So I meet my friend, and we go driving up into this canyon, and we're going to go fish there for the day. In this canyon, there's no cell phone service, and, now I'm just hanging out with my friend, we're talking, we're fishing, and before I know it, the whole day has gone by, and it's now like 8 o'clock, it's about dark. I hadn't really realized I didn't have cell phone service this whole time. We were just doing stuff, so I hadn't looked at my phone at all. So it's like 8 o'clock Western time zone, Mountain time zone. We get to the truck, we drive out of this canyon, and now it's like 8:30, and I'm thinking, I should probably check in with Kylie. So I'm like, hey, Matt, I'm gonna give my wife a call. So I call her, and she picks up the phone, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, hey, I just got done fishing. How you doing? And she's like, well, hell, I can't even remember exactly what she just said. She just said, I'm so mad at you, and she slams the phone down. And I'm like, holy crap, what is going on? And then when she canceled the phone, now all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up with voicemails and text messages and all this stuff that had been happening while I'd been out of service. So what had happened is I checked with her around noon or something the day before, and then, as I mentioned, got really busy the next day, was out of service. Well, she started texting me like, hey, what's going on? It was about, it was the next day, we hadn't talked. She wanted, what's going on? Nothing. Texts me again a few hours later. Nothing. Calls me a few hours later. Nothing. Now it's like dinner time on the Eastern time zone, and she realized she hasn't heard from me in over 24 hours. She starts getting a little worried because I'm out there in the middle of nowhere by myself, sitting in a tree, doing all this kind of stuff. She starts talking to her mom, and her mom, worries about that kind of stuff. So she starts being worried, which makes Kylie more worried. She checks in with my buddies who are going to meet me out there. They haven't heard from me in a while. This makes her more worried. Long story short, all this kind of builds up, and she ends up freaking out, worried that she hasn't heard from me in so long, and calls the local authorities and asks someone to come check the campsite where I'm supposed to be. They come check. My truck's not there. I'm nowhere to be found. And she's freaking out, crying, calling my friends, calling her mom. And then all of a sudden I call her, 30 hours later or something. Hey, what's up? And that didn't go over real well. So I think my big lesson learned from that whole thing was to set expectations. I we had not set a clear expectation of like, if you don't hear from me in 24 hours, it's okay to be worried. Or on the other hand, it's likely I'm not going to have service a lot, so don't worry if you don't hear from me for 2 days or something like that. We didn't have that conversation beforehand. So because I had been checking with her every day, and then all of a sudden I didn't, that really freaked her out, and it led to a whole bunch of all sorts of mess and an angry wife. So figure out your communication plan, set expectations, and stay in good communication if she's expecting that. That was my big aha from all that.
There's a very good chance when I guess this was in regards to our Idaho hunt that we went on. There's a very good chance that I'm not going to have service, so I may not be able to communicate with you for up to 4 or 5 days. Luckily there was, and that made her happy. But especially this trip that I'm going on in Colorado this upcoming year, there's a very good chance I'm not going to have any type of communication. So those expectations, just with anything in life, expectations have to be set up front, or you don't want to be like, oh yeah, I'm in Denver. This is the last you're going to hear from me for 7 days.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I learned that one the hard way. That one was a painful one. That was my fault, I guess. So
I think we're used, for me with kids, as soon as I would have shot my deer, dropped it off the processor, waited till whatever it was that needed to get done got done, and then I'm back in my truck and I'm heading back to Iowa. Now that's my circumstances, right? If I would have tagged out, just like in when I was in Nebraska a couple years ago, the last day was really rainy and windy and wet. And instead of staying one more night and fighting the elements, I decided to get back into, go home a day early, and just to, make the wife happy, basically balance, choosing the unlikelihood that I was going to tag out versus going home and, making my wife somewhat happy that I, was out there or came home early, made the quote unquote right decision.
Or gave up early, however you want to look at it, Dan.
Right. Yeah. Gave up early. Yeah.
No, I've done that before too. Speaking of communication, we left one of our elk, I can't remember if it was the elk hunt with you or the elk hunt before, but we left, like half day early or a day early or something like that. And I thought it'd be cool to surprise my wife.
Yeah.
Don't do that. If you have a wife who is armed and ready to defend herself, because I did not tell her I was going to get home, and I pulled into the house at like midnight or something. Oh, and boy. The dog started barking, and I'm fiddling with the door, and she grabbed the gun and came walking out. And I walked in, and I was like, hey, it's just me. But I gave her a little bit of a scare, and she told me, don't ever do that again. You probably got killed.
Right. That's nuts.
So, yeah. But so you're doing this elk hunt and your whitetail hunts. For me this year, I've got kind of a crazy year planned because, we're going to be going out west, like I alluded to a second ago. We're going to be doing 2 western trips this year. We're very fortunate and blessed to have really flexible work schedules, and we don't have kids yet, so we're kind of taking advantage of that. And this spring, in a few weeks, we're going to be heading out west for a little over a month, probably 5 weeks. And part of the time out there, I'm gonna fit in a couple hunts. I think I'm gonna do a turkey hunt out there. And
awesome.
Merriam's? Yeah, I guess that's what that is. What would be out there? And then I'm gonna do a spot and stalk black bear hunt.
Oh boy.
So I'm really excited about both of those. Some different stuff out there out west, and then I'm gonna try to do a little bit of scouting for a Montana deer hunt again. I'm gonna do that again in September. And then, so that's going to be like April and early May. Then I'm going to come back for part of May and June. And then sometime in July, we're going to head back out and spend July and August out there. And then, like I said, going to do the September whitetail hunt in Montana. And then tentatively, assuming nothing goes wrong with the plans that I'm kind of working out right now, going to go to Alaska for a DIY caribou hunt.
That's bananas.
Which is bananas, yeah. So So those would be my western trips. And then when I get back from that, I'm going to still try to do my Ohio deer hunts, my Michigan home deer hunts, and then I got to figure out if I'm going to be able to do Iowa like I do every other year. This is my year to draw an Iowa tag. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off given how much I'm going to be gone in September. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know if I can be gone for 2 weeks in November too. So that, again, for me is I got to figure out that balance with her. But definitely Michigan and Ohio, maybe Iowa. And another crazy idea I had, and this probably I shouldn't do this, but I started thinking, okay, if I'm not going to do like a rut hunt in Iowa, maybe I can do a late season trip somewhere, because I would have been home for a couple months. Maybe in December she'll be ready to get rid of me, and I can go maybe do an Iowa muzzleloader hunt or just bow hunt in late season. Or I've also thought about like somewhere like South Dakota, which there's just some super cool spots out there in that state to do some hunts and all public land stuff. I want to do some more public land like we talked about. Yeah. So I've been looking at some stuff like that. But with all that,
I say save your point for Iowa.
You think so?
And collect, skip out for 2 more years, get those points, and then you can start hunting in the best zone in Iowa.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't know if it's that much different than where I hunt right now. I know that that's, where the famous people like Dan Johnson hunt, but I just don't know
if more. There's just the entire southern part of the state there's just more to choose from. There's more timber. There's more ag. I mean, you get up to where we went shed hunting into your neck of the woods. Yeah, there's pockets and spots, but where we went shed hunting, it's good. It's a really good deer hunting. However, everything around that is ag, which means you're not going to find more. I guess there's just more down in the southern units.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta think about it because
think about it, Mark.
I'm thinking about it, but it's not like if I go and I shoot a big buck on the property next to yours, since I'd go in there and lease it out from under you or something like that.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be happy with me. So
I'd slash your tires.
Yeah, you probably would. But I don't know. I just like the idea of being able to hunt there more often, and it's hard to wait 4 years. So I think where I hunt in Iowa, there's a great chance on any given year that I could kill a 4-year-old, 150 class, or bigger. And every time I've hunted there, I've seen at least 160s, and numerous 4 or 5+ year old bucks. So, okay, if that's what my assumption would be for this general region I hunt now, do I really think I could do that much better down by you? I mean, I don't know. Do you think that there's a substantially better chance for me to see or kill a 160 or 170? I mean, sure, there's probably some more, but I just don't know if it's quantifiably that much different.
Right. So, I guess it depends on what your goal is. I mean, if you're looking for big racks and big antlers, then yes. But if you're looking to kill a mature buck, 4-year-old or older, then anywhere in the state of Iowa, or any other states for that matter, is going to give you that opportunity.
What I think the thing is that when I look at the difference between where I hunt now in Michigan, so that difference between Michigan hunting and where I go to Iowa is huge. Mm-hmm. So I'm already like, whoa, this is so awesome. And then the incremental difference though between where I hunt in Iowa and where you hunt in Iowa, that's like a small difference. Right. That it's like either way is going to be way better than I'm used to now. So I'm just pretty happy with either one, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, we'll see. So that all is where I'm thinking about going this year, where you're thinking about going this year, your Iowa hunts and your family stuff, your elk hunt. What I do want to talk about that now, we've rambled for 45 minutes. I want to talk about kind of how we think through this stuff. What are some of the important things? So if people out there want to plan some trips of their own, what are the things they need to think about? And, both of us have now either planned and been on some of these different out-of-state trips. I've done some more, but you went through a planning process for a mule deer hunt that we never actually went on, but you did a bunch of planning for it, and then we did go on that elk hunt together, and now you're planning for a new elk hunt, and I've planned 4 or 5 elk hunts now and numerous out-of-state deer hunts, and now I'm planning an out-of-state bear hunt, out-of-state elk or caribou hunt. So I want to talk about how we've done that and some of the things we've learned. And I think there's a few just right off the bat, easy things you got to kind of figure out for yourself. You got to figure out where you want to go, like general region, and what species you want to hunt. And I think a lot of that kind of comes down to like just your personal preference. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, okay, I love the Rocky Mountains. I want to hunt something there. And then I look at like, okay, what's the right species there? But for me, it was like, I want to hunt in a certain region. I want to be in the mountains and I want to be in the West. So I think some people maybe go about it that way. And then some other people say, I've always been fascinated with mule deer, or I've always been fascinated by a moose. I really want to hunt a moose. What's the best place to kill a moose?
Right.
I think that's like two different ways to look at it, but it probably comes down to like your goals, right? Like, do you want a certain experience, or do you want to kill a big animal of X species? So maybe that's the first thing you got to think about is what's your goal going to be, and then you choose which of those two different things,
Right. For me, being new to hunting the West, I've only gone on one elk hunt and one mule deer / antelope hunt. I think I did that based off of species first and foremost. I wanted to kill an elk, so that's what we did. However, I want to talk about the hunt that I'm planning in the background of some of these other hunts that I'll be going on, because my Colorado hunt, I'll be completely honest with you, I got a friend out there who is letting me tag along on some spots that he has had successful, in the past. So I'm not really doing too much except planning the gear portion of it. I am looking on maps and giving advice when and if needed. But for this particular hunt, it's going to be DIY. It's going to be all public ground. But that I have some inside information, and that's kind of how I'm going. I got invited, and I'm like, sure, why not?
That is a great way to get your start out there. I mean,
that's right.
My first Western hunt was with a couple buddies who had been out there before, and because it is a little bit intimidating if you've never done something like that. To try to, for me, I think the hardest part, at least before you've done it before, is like, just where do I go? Because there's so many places you could go, and I always have the worry of if I just pick a place on a map and then I get there and there's going to be like 70 cars and I'm going to be dealing with all those other people. Like my biggest fear when it comes to any kind of hunt, whether it be a whitetail hunt or a elk or big game of some other sort, it's like I just don't want to be with a bunch of other people and dealing with that. So if you've got some friends who have a little bit of information, that's a great way to go about it. Or even, if you don't have friends that you can already hunt with, I think one of the things that have helped both of us the most has been like just trying to get somebody on the ground that can offer you some type of insight. I mean, I remember when we were planning our mule deer hunt, you were calling biologists out there and talking to some biologists, and they had some great intel. I think that's probably something that a lot of people don't take advantage of. Or connecting with someone on a forum that you happen to bounce around or that you see on Twitter a lot, and that that they live in such and such state, and if you just say, hey, I'm just trying to learn some things about this area, do you happen to know anybody who might be willing to talk to me? And who knows, if you start mining your personal network like that, you might eventually end up with a friend who is willing to share that they had been to this region and know that this drainage is great, this drainage has a lot of other hunters. I mean, I think that putting in your footwork in that way can pay off big time.
Right. So one thing I learned about the West is it's just like the Midwest when it comes to hunting property. I'm not going to share my hunting property information or the specific area where I hunt with anybody who asks, right? So I've learned that if you're going to communicate, for example, I used to go on some forums and I said, hey, not looking to kill a giant mule deer, but I want to kill a buck, looking for good numbers. What zone would you recommend? Someone points you in the direction of a zone maybe, but not specific portions of that zone, because that's giving away too much information. I'm a bow hunter, and typically, out west, some of these rifle hunts, you're talking 10 years to draw some of these tags, because and that's another thing to consider is the unit that you want to hunt over the counter, is it going to take you 1 year of points to draw, 2 year of points? Is it a lottery where you put your name in every year, and if you draw, you draw, if you don't, you don't? there's a lot of other things to consider. So definitely you have to put in the keyboard time behind that hunt as well.
Yeah. To your point about how people might not want to share specific spots, very
Right.
true, and I would never like press someone for that. But at the same time, you might come into, or you might run into a person who moved, or they just know they're not going to
Yep.
be hunting in that region again, and they don't care. They don't like, hey, yeah, I hunted in this specific trailhead, or this is where I went out of, and I'm not going to be there next year for the next 2 years.
Yep.
But so it doesn't hurt to just try to have conversations. Don't be pushy about it. But
Yeah, you make a great point there, because I got into communication with a guy who moved from Colorado back home, either to, I think maybe it was Ohio or Michigan or Pennsylvania or somewhere like that, for a job. And he shared he shared a ton of information with me about some spots in Colorado to look for elk, because of his past experience. And I met him through Facebook, or I think it was Facebook. So he shared he's just like, check out this lake in the northwest part of it, check out this river and this trailhead here. And he didn't really say walk 100 yards up, take a left, follow the tree line, go up, follow it up another 1,000 feet. It was just like, check out this area, check out this area, check out this area. And you're going to fight people, but it's there for you.
yeah, no, I mean, and the same thing even can go for whitetail stuff.
Right.
There's going to be guys that moved, or people that hunted a piece of public land but aren't going to be going back to that same state. If you're trying to plan an out-of-state whitetail hunt, it does not hurt to try to make some connections, to try to chat with some people, and at least get some kind of direction. Because even though there's a lot of resources available online right now, like official resources, articles, and the state DNR website and stuff like that, you can only go so far with that stuff. You really do need to try to make some type of connection. I will say one resource that I have found super helpful, and I'm kind of plugging a competitor, I guess, in some way, a little bit, but they're Western focused. So the website called GoHunt.com. I know you've been on there too.
I got a subscription to them.
Yeah, ditto. If you're going for a Western hunt, that is a very handy tool. Their insider tool. It breaks down each state. You can go to the state and get some general information about, like you said, like how do you apply? What's the lottery? What are the odds like? When do you need to apply? What species are there? All that kind of stuff. It breaks down all that stuff by state.
Success rates, everything.
Yeah, and then when you break it down by species, like you say, okay, I want to hunt elk in Montana or elk in Wyoming or whatever. You pick that species, you pick the area, and then you can drill down by unit, and they give you information even down to the unit level. Like, okay, this unit is 68% public land, so lots of public access, and with this many points, this is your likelihood of drawing, and this is what like the weather's been like over the last 10 years, and all sorts of stuff. Like it's very, very helpful, and it costs there's a yearly subscription fee, but I have found it's probably worth it if you're going to plan a few things like this, and then also like they have the information about like. It's tough for these Western hunts trying to figure out when you need to apply and how many times you got to apply and how do I get points versus how do I get into the lottery versus all that kind of stuff. So breaking all that stuff down so you know the tag situation, so you know the regulations that, or you really should just go to the state DNR's website and read through their whole regulation booklet too, because that stuff is a nightmare if you don't. But there are some online resources like that are worth checking out to get just your basics figured out. And I actually was just watching a video from Randy Newberg, our friend Randy, and he was talking about this exact topic, how he goes and he utilizes some stuff like that, and then he goes and utilizes some of these different online services where you can get plat maps and see property ownership and see public land versus private land and stuff. And in some of these places where like if there's a unit that doesn't have a lot of public land access, lots of times that will just turn people away. So they'll see that a unit is like, there's only 10% public land. So they'll say, oh, well, forget that. That's too difficult. But if you go and find those spots that don't have a lot of public land, but if you have the resources that show you where those little honey holes of public are, you can actually get into some relatively low pressure hunting situations because of that. So that was kind of a good trick that, maybe we just ruined for people, but that's something to look for. And then once you have that kind of stuff, you can go in there on the ground when you hunt or look on whatever mapping tools you use online and figure out what the terrain looks like, how can you access these spots, and get in there. But
and you mentioned it before you go into the next thing. You mentioned it just a hair. Is when I was doing research on this mule deer hunt, I called up the guy who does the wildlife biologist in that area, and it is their job to share information like that. So, unless I doubt they're going to tell you, "Hey, I saw a 170 in this draw," right? But what they will do is they'll provide you with statistics, like, "Hey, we had this success rate. We had the fawn birth rate was good. We did a study and we showed that there was this this percent of population or whatever." And I don't think those guys, if I had to guess, I don't think that those guys get used like hunters should.
Yeah. To your point, I mean, you got some pretty good intel from those guys when you called the past couple of years.
Right. And they gave me pretty specific details of where I can find mule deer. And another thing that I did was this was just because I was curious of if it would work. I started calling local businesses. And I straight up said, "Hey, my name's Dan. I'm from Iowa, and I'm going to come out there and I'm going to do a deer hunt or an elk hunt. And I want some insight. I'm looking for, a little bit more information than what I could get online." And I called a gas station, and this lady asked, and there must have been a guy she knew standing right there buying something, a Mountain Dew or something, and was just like, "Hey, this guy's from Iowa. He wants to come elk hunting." And I talked to this guy on the gas station phone for about 15, 20 minutes about he wasn't big into mule deer hunting, but he was into elk hunting. And he told me, he's like, "Yeah, you go up this road and all throughout there, you're going to find, good hunting, but you want to stay away from this area because it's easy to get to. And there's going to be a lot of guys there. I typically go here." And so it was random, but if you put in the time and cover all those things, people will, you're bound to hit something or somebody.
That's such a Dan Johnson thing to do. Call a gas station.
Oh, heck yeah, man.
But I
Why
love
not?
it.
Why not?
Awesome.
If you're gonna spend $2,000 on a hunt, whether that's the travel out there, you want to, everybody wants to go out and kill, let's say, a big bull or a big mule deer. So why not try to get as much information on those places as possible, whether it's big or a bull or an mule deer. It doesn't have to be a big one, because I'm a first timer. I'll shoot just about anything, even a doe going out there. just want numbers. So just seeing an animal that I'm not used to on the hoof is a win-win for me. So, use everything as a resource. I called a hotel and the guy's like, "You know what? I'm not a hunter, but my brother-in-law is. Let me take down your information." And this guy called me, and we talked for a while. And he was a rifle hunter, and he would basically just go up into certain areas, shoot the first cow for meat. But he's like, "I can show you where there's numbers at. I don't concentrate on hunting bulls. I just shoot the first elk that walks out every year." So,
yeah, I think we underestimate how helpful sometimes people are willing to be.
It all goes back to knocking on doors, for whitetails.
True.
Don't be a pussy. Just
True.
go do it. Everybody is complains about, "Oh, I don't know if I'm that kind of guy. I don't know if I'm that kind of guy." All right, well, good. More for me.
Yeah. I think those are willing to put themselves out there, like you said, whether it be trying to find a whitetail spot or trying to find an elk spot or a bear spot or anything like that. Yeah. If you go out there and talk to people, get out there, too many people, I think, make excuses not to do this stuff. You know, they always say, oh, I'd love to go out of state on a deer hunt or out of state on a moose hunt or whatever. But you know, not this year, next year or some other year, because they don't know how to find a spot to hunt, or they're worried it's going to cost too much money, or it's going to, you know, they don't know how to hunt moose or something. But I think one of the big things I've learned is that all of this stuff can be done more affordably than most people assume. It can be done more easily than most people assume. And it's not as scary as most people assume. You know,
right.
I think if you want to go hunt a moose or a whitetail in a big buck state or a bear or an elk, the resources out there are there. Like, there is enough stuff now where you can either talk to people or go online and learn stuff. You can learn enough about the animal to be dangerous out there. There's enough public land, or if you're willing to knock on doors, there are places you can find to hunt on private property. And you can do it cheap if you plan it out. If you camp, if you bring your own food, if you don't buy extravagant things, like, you can do this stuff for way less money than a normal family vacation. Or if you just decide not to buy a new big screen TV this year and stop buying Starbucks for a few months, you can go do these dream trips. It's just a matter of making that choice and prioritizing it, you know, sacrifice a little bit to make this thing happen.
Amen.
So what have we talked about? We talked about you got to set your goals. You got to figure out the regulations and tag situations. There's lots of online resources. Finding a place to hunt, of course. We talked about some ways to do that. You got to do some digital scouting. So if you don't know specifically where you're going to hunt yet, you need to look at some maps, look at terrain. It's important to understand whatever kind of species it is you're hunting. You got to understand, like, just like deer hunting. You know, we know that you can look at a map and say, okay, this is a likely spot that deer might be feeding. This is a likely spot that deer might be bedded, and this is a likely way they're traveling between those two things. If you learn enough about the animal, like we have with whitetails, you can see that on a map. The same thing can go for elk or mule deer or whatever else. You just need to go and learn that stuff. So if you're hunting elk, read a bunch of stuff about how elk behave. What types of terrain do they feed in? What types of terrain do they bed in? And then, you know, there's great stuff online now. Like, if you're trying to get into elk hunting, Randy Newberg has some great videos about this stuff. Corey Jacobson's Elk University, I think it's called, or Elk 101 or something like that, has a bunch of videos and resources about understanding this type of stuff. How do you digitally scout for elk? I'm sure there's something out there for mule deer and these different things. Where you can learn how to look at maps and learn this stuff for these different species. So go out there and do that stuff. Take your time, figure that out, digitally scout, and then have a game plan. You know, like with you and me, Dan, whether it be for our mule deer hunt that we were planning and then the elk hunt that we actually went on, going into both of those, we said, okay, we know what general region we want to go hunt. When we get there, you know, we've got a plan A and a plan B, and if there's too many people here, we'll try to shift over there. But you have a game plan, and then you got to go and do it flexible. Yeah. Same thing for a whitetail trip. When I showed up, you know, in Iowa on a piece of property that I knocked on doors and got permission a few years ago, I went in there beforehand. I said, okay, I think I want to hunt in these two spots during the earlier season and during the rut. These are my couple core places. And then you get there on the ground, and you then get a temperature on it. See, okay, is it what I thought it was going to be from the digital scouting? And then you start hunting. And then you kind of learn as you go, and that's an adventure on its own. But I don't think we need to necessarily talk about how to do the actual hunting. That's something you got to figure out, learn yourself. But I think having at least a basic game plan to get started is a good way to get that off and rolling. So
Gear.
Yeah. I did want to talk about gear for these types of trips because, again, when it comes to costs, for any kind of DIY hunting trip, trying to keep it as affordable as possible is great. And I think the best way to do that is either get a bunch of guys crammed into a really cheap hotel room or camp. Yep. So we haven't really talked about camping gear at all, I don't think. Have we talked about some of the stuff that I use on those trips or what we used on our elk hunting trip or anything like that?
We may have mentioned it, but not into detail. I will say that for me, because I didn't have any type of quote unquote Western DIY backcountry style hunting equipment, my first year and the initial cost was greater than this upcoming year when I have all that stuff. And now I may need to just buy some freeze-dried meals, and other than that, I'm good to go.
Yeah, that's true. If you're going to start doing something like that, the upfront costs are going to be a little bit more. But if you think about, okay, I'm going to continue to go on trips like this over the next 10 years or something, that cost goes down significantly when you don't need to buy all those things to get you started.
Yep.
And there really are actually a lot of places you can get this kind of camping gear at significant discounts now. Whether it be hunting gear, like camofire.com is a website I've used in the past to get great deals on even like Sitka gear, hunting clothing, or camping gear, or other hunting stuff. There's a website.
I think it's huntinggeardeals.com.
Yep. That's another one. You're right. Hunt of the Day is another one I just recently found out about. And then also just regular retailers like Cabela's or REI or Amazon, eBay.
Steep and
Cheap. Yep, that's a good one I forgot about. Another one called The Climb.
But The Climb, yes.
Spelled CLYMB, not CLI. That's another one that has discounts. Backcountry.com. There's a website called Devor, DVOR.com, that if you become a member, it doesn't cost anything, but if you just kind of like Groupon used to be, like if you remember whatever, you had access to all their special deals. That's another one that has some of this kind of stuff. SierraTradingPost.com is an online retailer that specializes in like selling like overstocked and out of season type gear like that, but lots of camping stuff you can get for big time discounts there. So if you shop around and look at some of these places, you can get the stuff you need. You don't need that year's newest, fanciest gear to go out and have a good hunt,
Yep, unless you get a hole in your tent.
Well, and then in that case, then you buy the very most expensive. She fleeced you, dude. She absolutely fleeced you.
Oh man, my wife still talks about that. Having to pay a lot of money in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is obviously one of the most expensive towns in the whole United States to live in, going and buying a tent that I probably could have bought for $300 less online somewhere else. But when you need it, you need it.
And it is a nice tent.
It is a very nice tent.
So at least you're set for the future.
That's right.
But let's talk camping gear a little bit. Because if for people, whether it be a whitetail hunter, an elk hunter, or whatever, if you're at a camp, I guess I can walk through the stuff that's worked for me, because I've done a lot of this, not only just for the hunting, but then also a lot of camping, backpacking, just my wife and I. So for the backpacking stuff, when we backpacked in for our elk hunts and everything like that, I think some of the most important things are your essentials of a sleeping pad. Mm-hmm. A good sleeping bag that's rated to the temperature that you need. Oh, jeez. My Alexa unit is talking to me. You ever seen one of those things, Dan? Alexa?
Is that where you say, Alexa, buy dog food, and it buys dog food, or it sends you, it plays porno?
Yes, that's this.
Okay.
I got one of those for Christmas, and she talks to me every once in a while randomly.
Gotcha.
What the heck was I talking about? Oh, sleeping bag. Make sure you get one that compresses, like a backpacking sleeping bag that's small, packs down small, and that's rated to cold enough temperatures. You don't want to take like the sleeping bag that rolls up. It's like 2 feet by 3 feet or something.
Yeah.
I think it's worth investing a little bit of money in a decent sleeping bag that's going to get into your backpack okay. And then a inflatable sleeping pad. I've used ones from Thermarest and REI. Both have been really good. You can get those for not too much money. And then, of course, tent. Make sure you've got a rainproof tent, a good 3-season tent. That, again, all these things, if you're going to backpack with it, weight is a consideration. So you try to get as light as you can get, but without blowing your budget. And lots of times, the more lightweight stuff, the more ultralight stuff, the more expensive it is. So you got to find that balance point for you. But you can find some pretty good deals out there for all these things. So what tent? You ended up getting an MSR tent, right?
Yes, MSR. I think it's actually a 3-man. I thought it was a 2-man, but I think I bought the 3-man version for like $700. I had to have it.
You did have to have it. A tent that's worked really well for me and for a lot of people I know is the REI Half Dome tent. It's a 2-person tent, and it's one of the most popular long-running backpacking tents out there. And it's really pretty darn good for the price. I think it was. I can't remember exactly what it was. Less than $200, I'm pretty sure. And we've put that thing through the ringer. So that's a really good kind of beginner backpacking tent. Got to have a water filter if you're going to be backpacking in there. And I've always used either a Katadyn, Katadyn, which is like one of those pump filters. And I think you had an MSR as well for your water filter. Yeah,
an MSR pump water filter that can connect directly into your Camelback or your water bladder that goes into your backpack.
Yeah, those are nice. If you don't want the pump, which is kind of like most people have a pump, where you just put this little tube in the water and another tube comes out of the filter and goes into your water bottle or whatever, and you pump it out. But another option, if you want to go with a lighter option, and it's actually less expensive, is a squeeze filter. And this is what I've used the past probably 3 years now, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. It's a little bit slower to use, but it takes up a lot less space and weight. It's a Sawyer is the brand, and basically it's just a bag, and you put the bag in the stream or the river, and you kind of just move it around until it fills up with water, and then you just screw on the little bottle top, and then you squeeze the water out of that bag through the bottle top, and then it just comes out filtered on the other side.
Yeah,
and that's pretty handy, like $40 or something like that. So from a water standpoint, that was an option that worked well for me. And then what else? Cook set and stove.
Mm-hmm.
I use these actually not only just for my backpacking hunts, but also on my regular deer hunting camping trips. I use an MSR pocket rocket stove. So it's just basically
the same.
Yeah, so you got the same one. It's just this little metal thing that screws onto a little fuel canister. And it's basically just a burner, a little fuel burner, and you light it, and you can then put your little pot on it and boil water or make whatever kind of food you want. So I use that MSR Pocket Rocket, a little canister, one of these MSR fuel canisters, and then this cook set that I absolutely love is from a brand called GSI. It's the GSI Halulite Soloist. So that's Halulite, that's HALULITE, and that's the Soloist. So it's like a little pot set for solo for one person. So within this little pot, do you have this one, Dan, or do you have something different?
I have a different version of the same one.
Okay.
Because it comes in, like, it has different options. But I think I had either the step, it might have been the step above yours. It offered some more extra things.
Yeah, I can't remember which it was, but the one I have, it's got this little pot. It's probably a 4-inch diameter bottom of the pot, about 5 inches tall, and inside of it is a little fork, a little spork, kind of expandable spork, and a little pot gripper, and then you can actually put your stove inside of that, and then there's a lid, and you've got basically everything you need right there. So your pot, so you can make water, and then you put that in your freeze-dried meal, or you can heat up water for coffee, or heat up whatever food you want. You've got your little eating utensil, you got your stove in there, and it's all in one little tiny kind of compartment. So I really like that. And then there's maybe this is the one you have. There's also a version called the Dualist, DUALIST, and that's like the 2-person version of that. So it's got 2 kind of mug/bowls. It's got the big pot, everything else you need. We've got one of those that we use when my wife and I backpack together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the setup for the backpack hunts. The stove, the water, sleeping system. You need a headlamp, your basic hunting gear. And that's basically it. I mean, there's a handful of other items maybe you need. Survival kit, some first aid type stuff, knife, etc. But it's not crazy. There's not a crazy amount of stuff. And then when I'm camping out of my truck or just car camping with a tent, the only things I would change is I would then add, like a camp chair, and I've got a Coleman stove that I use to make things when I'm car camping like that. So you can grill burgers or steaks or whatever. And then on my, like my Montana hunt, what I did is I brought my big cooler with a bunch of frozen meals. So I pre-made dinners back home, froze them, put them in the cooler, and then I ate that throughout my time while I was deer hunting there, so I didn't have to buy stuff all the time. So I just heated stuff up on my little stove, or I I think one night I had like lasagna soup. One night I had chili. One night I had some kind of stew. I can't remember whatever else. But I mean, right there I was able to cut my costs exponentially just because I kind of planned that out. And it's kind of fun. I slept in the back of my truck most of the nights. If you've got a topper on your truck, that works really good. I really like that. And then I brought the tent for one night when I killed my buck. I put the buck in the truck and then slept out in the tent. I don't know. What other things haven't we talked about when it comes to gear?
Man, I can't tell you how important it is to have a good pair of boots. And I don't mean, just go to Cabela's and buy a pair of boots. I mean, do some research because, and part of this was my own fault because I didn't go take the proper steps because I knew I was going on this elk hunt. I bought a pair of boots. I broke them in. I wore them through like turkey hunting and stuff like that. But I didn't take the proper steps to take care of them like I should have. And what I mean by that is make sure they were waterproofed properly. And my feet got wet and they were wet my boots were wet almost the entire trip.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any blisters because they were well broken in, but my feet were wet. And from a mental standpoint, it kind of screwed with me a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's glad you mentioned that because if you're doing a Western hunt, that is almost the most important thing.
Right.
I mean,
if your feet go, you go. That's my opinion.
Yeah. To your point, it's an easy way to lose your mental edge if you don't have that covered. I have worn Danner boots out there elk hunting, and I've worn Oslo hiking boots, and I've been really happy with both of them. I would just say something waterproof, something that's broken in, and something that has a lot of support, especially if you're backpacking in or if you're hoping to pack out a deer or an elk or some kind of animal. You need to have that support around your ankles and stuff. Otherwise, you can easily hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So that's clutch. Speaking of that kind of stuff, packs. Got to make sure you've got a good pack. If you're going to do, even for a deer hunt, I had to have a good pack when I'm packing in, your stand, your tree stand, your sticks, all that kind of stuff. I mean, having a good hunting backpack is really important. And I think one thing I've learned is that there really is something to be said about finding the right fit for your body.
Right.
So I've had some packs with certain brands that I really liked, but they just didn't fit my body type right. So I've had to try different things. So for example, for all my whitetail hunts, I use a Sitka Toolbox backpack. I think it's it might be the Tool Bucket, and that's an awesome pack for my whitetail hunts. But when I use the Sitka pack for my elk hunt, not that one, but a different one, they're Bivy 45. It just didn't fit my torso type right. So when I was out there with a lighter load, it was great. But when I had a really, really heavy load, it just didn't work right I've got a really short torso, long legs. So I had to try some different packs to find something that would handle the really heavy weights. While I've had other people that use that same pack and loved it, it really comes down to if you're doing a backpacking type hunt, I think it's a really good idea to go into a store, try these different packs on, try to find a way to load them down with a lot of weight and see where it pulls on you, see how your body fits into it. Because that's another thing that I think you'll be really miserable if you don't have a good fit for your body. I mean, have you found anything like that when you went out there at one time, Dan?
Well, I'll be honest. I got lucky in that aspect. I think I had a Tenzing 4000 that I bought for whitetail hunting, but it has a meat compartment and it's 4,000 cubic inches. So it did exactly what I need it to do. If I, shot a elk, I probably would have been able to put a quarter into it, but it fit me well. I didn't have any issues with having to continually adjust it or anything. I made sure that pack was going to fit, of course. When I was doing my exercises in the summertime, I loaded it down with a lot of weight. I went on hikes with it, looked for problem spots, and then I adjusted where I needed to. But it was good enough where I didn't need to go buy a new pack.
Yeah, that's nice. I think one of the key things with that type of situation is that a lot of packs feel pretty good when you've got 30 pounds in it, or if you're backpacking into camp with 45 pounds or something, they feel pretty good. But when you're packing out an elk or something like that, and you've got a 100-pound load, that's when you really tell if it's the right fit or not. That was when I figured it out. I was like, okay, this just isn't working for me with 95 pounds on here. So one year I tried an external frame backpack. So there's two different types. There's the internal frame where it just looks like a cloth exterior backpack, and then the supports are inside of it, like the metal or plastic supports to give that pack some heft to it to hold weight. Those are inside. And then there's the external frame backpacks. Those are the ones that you see like big metal piping outside of it, kind of. So I've tried an internal frame. That didn't fit my body right, so I tried an external frame the next year, and that probably would have handled the heavier weight better, but it was bulky and cumbersome when I was just trying to hunt during the day. That was the pack I used, I think, when I hunted with you. It just wasn't great for the day-to-day hunts. And so this past year I used an EXO mountain gear pack, and that I found fit my body right and was a good mix between the two. It had more support so that when we packed out a cow elk, and I probably had a 65 or 70-pound load, maybe more, and it handled that extreme weight much better. But then because it was still an internal frame pack, it handled the day-to-day hunts when I didn't have a lot of weight in there more comfortably, and it just wasn't as cumbersome. So that was the right fit for me. I found that sweet spot between the two. So I think that's an important decision. If you're gonna do one of these hunts when you're gonna be packing out heavy weights, packing in camp, do your due diligence. Try some different things. Figure out what fits you.
Amen.
So packs, we've talked camping gear. We've talked about different ways to figure all this stuff out. I'm trying to think what other things you need to think about when going about any of these types of hunts. I think, an important thing, and again, this applies to any type of hunt trip, is figuring out what you're going to do with the meat and what you're going to do with the animal, the cape or the antlers, taxidermy, all that kind of stuff. Every different state has different regulations. There's different challenges with it. What I've always tried to do is I've always tried to figure out where a processor is locally beforehand, so that when you're dealing with it in the moment, you're not stressed about it, because you know how it is. If you kill something, it always takes longer than you think to get it taken care of and to get it back out to the truck and to take it wherever you go. And then if you have hot weather or something, then you're stressing about that. So that's important. Figure out a processor if you're going to get processed, or if you're going to do it yourself. Make sure you got the right equipment. Figure all that out. Also,
make a list and check it twice.
Yeah. Another important thing, I think we've mentioned this in the past, but if you're going to be driving home with that animal or parts of that animal, make sure you know the laws about transporting carcasses, transporting antlers and meat. There's a lot of states now that don't allow you to transport meat across state lines. Not meat, sorry, but certain parts of a deer or elk because of disease issues. So, for example,
the meat has to be out of the head.
Yeah.
Bringing it, yeah.
Yeah, you got to debone the meat, and you can't bring back like a full deer carcass, for example, from a CWD positive state back into Michigan or back into a different state. The meat's got to be deboned and taken care of, and then you can only bring the cleaned skull cap, so the antlers and the bone, but everything's got to be off of it. The brain, tissue, all that kind of stuff has got to be gone. There's a lot of people right now that I think are shooting a deer in Iowa or Illinois or something, throwing it in the back of the truck, and then driving 6 hours back into Michigan or back to their home state, not knowing that what they're doing is illegal. And if you get pulled over, you're in some trouble. Yep. So make sure you know those regulations when you're doing anything like this. And the same types of things probably apply to elk and mule deer and different things along those lines. So what else, Dan, have we not talked about when it comes to doing these types of trips? Or what else with your trip? Is there any other planning you've done for your Colorado trip that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, I haven't got into it yet, but the only thing that I have that I'm going to do is, like I said, as far as the location itself, that's pretty much taken care of through my friend. The only thing that I need to do is double check all my gear and go through it, make sure it's not heavily worn, make sure it works, set my tent up, check my straps on my backpack, make sure you gave me a checklist several years ago, or before we went out on that Idaho trip that we went on. Look through that again, make sure my knife is sharp and working good, make sure I have the proper amount of, rope, make sure I have my batteries and my headlamp work, make sure I have my boots are up to par and won't get, wet again, and just make sure that everything is in working order. And if I need to purchase something new or whatever for the trip, I do that.
Yeah. My wife and I actually just did that for our just general camping gear for this April trip we're going on. We've got everything in these big totes. We took all the totes out, took everything out of the totes, and just laid it out. Like, here's all the camping stuff. Here's all the kitchen and food stuff. Here's all the backpacking stuff. Here's all the fishing. And just went through every piece and just said, okay, do we need to replace the batteries in this? Or do we need to fix the waterproofing on that? I mean, doing that stuff ahead of time is always going to pay off. You don't want to realize you have a leaky tent when you're sleeping in the rain,
Right. That's a fact. That is and then you have to go and bring your sleeping bag in and snuggle up next to another grown man.
Do you remember that very first night we ever camped together? We were spooning in Idaho. Like, I just didn't think that was how it was going to go.
Did you really try to get into my sleeping bag with me?
I thought that was established.
Oh, okay.
I just will never forget just my eyes opening in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden rain is like coming into my tent. I'm like, what is going on? And then like this big bearded man sticks his head in and says, hey, Mark, I got to come in here with you.
Yeah.
You were so miserable too.
Yep. It was not fun. I mean, I can remember I was a little bit hot, and I knew it was raining, but I was a little bit warm. So I unzipped my sleeping bag a little bit and put one of my arms out, and kind of when I rolled over on my side, my fingertips touched the bottom of the tent, and it was just like running water. Well, long story short, my buddy, that tent got put away still damp on one of his trips, and then he took it out when he got home and dried it off. But in that meantime, that all the waterproofing got ruined off that tent. Wow. So it was just basically absorbed. It was like a sponge and absorbed everything, and it let it all leak through. So, but now I got a good kick-ass tent, and that should last me for several more hunts.
Yeah. It's funny, stuff like that, like in the moment, right, you were miserable.
Right.
But now, like 2 years later, we can look back and say, oh man, that was awesome. That was funny.
Amen.
That's one of the other things about any kind of trip like this is like when you go out there, it's going to be challenging. Stuff's not going to go as planned. But it's always a lot of fun to look back on. And there's actually a guy I met at an event here relatively recently that listens to the Wired Hunt podcast. And he talked about how hearing some of our stories and some of the different things we've been talking about when it comes to doing a Western trip, it kind of inspired him to try to do something like that himself. And now he's planning his first elk hunt too. He's going to go out to Colorado, and he was talking how that like helped motivate him to get through the end of college, because he just knew when he got done with that, he was going to go on his first big Western hunting trip. And I think having a trip like this, planning something like that, whether it be any of these things we talked about, planning something, getting out and trying something new is a great way to just kind of get you through the year, to have something to look forward to push you to learn new things, makes you a better hunter. Whether you're hunting elk or mule deer or whitetails, when you try something new, it's going to make you a better general hunter. And you might not kill anything. Things might go wrong, but gosh, it's going to be pretty awesome if you go into it with the right attitude and just lifelong memories. I'm all about trying these different new things, and I'm probably not going to kill bear. I might not kill caribou. I don't know what I'm doing. All the things we just talked about, I'm in the process of trying to figure all this stuff out. But just like the act of trying, just being out there looking for bears, and just the act of being in territory where caribou might be, is gonna be such a cool experience, and I know I'm gonna grow a ton from it. And I'm pretty pumped for that. And it's like, as a hunter, I think a lot of our life kind of revolves around the next season or the next trip. It's a way to kind of get you through the doldrums of the daily cubicle life or whatever it might be. So I'm all about these trips, planning them out, giving new things a try, and it's going to give us, if nothing else, it's going to give us some good stories to tell, Dan,
Amen.
I'm pretty pumped. I'm getting excited.
I'm getting excited.
I'm getting hungry too. So I think we should probably wrap this one up. Any final thoughts, Dan?
Make the wife happy.
make the wife happy, get your brownie points, balance things, and then don't be afraid to try this stuff. I think that
is a fact.
That's a fact. Awesome, man. Well, with that said, I think we should wrap this one up. Before we go, though, we do need to thank our current partners who have helped make this podcast possible. So, big thanks to Sitka Gear, Yeti Coolers, Ozonics, Matthews Archery, Maven Optics, Whitetail Institute of North America, Carbon Express, and Huntera Maps. And finally, thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our chat. Hopefully some of you will be heading out on some new hunting trips this year too. And of course, I hope you'll stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.